back in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. This is really an important issue to address and very timely as we are heading into COP28 in just a few weeks. According to the World Economic Forum, it would take us 169 years at current pace to close the gender gap. That means several generations of women and girls will not be able to live and work to their full potential. And that has a cost to societies and economies. Closing the gender gap could add 12 to 28 trillion to the US dollars to the global economy was the mantra that we used back in 2015 when McKinsey issued their influential report on the financial gains that could come from closing the gender gap. We are now also fully focused on gender equality as an accelerator of sustainable development and climate action towards achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement and green transitions. And it is really important because we need all hands on deck. We need all those women, we need all those girls in the years to come up with these solutions to this unprecedented multiple planetary crisis that we are facing. So in today's session, we will have some really great speakers join me from GGGI, UN Women, the UN Environmental Programme, and the Climate Investment Fund to discuss what are we currently doing and how can we release the full potential of climate action as an accelerator also of gender equality. So we also have a launch today, which is quite exciting. So together with UN Women, GGGI has worked to incorporate gender into a long-term low-emission development strategy in Burkina Faso. And we will be happy to share in the chat with all the audience today a paper and a tool that we have put together for how we integrated gender into this climate instrument. So in a minute, we will return to that with our speaker from UN Women. But before that, I would like to welcome Dr. Malle Fofana to deliver the first speech. So Malle is a great advocate for gender in green growth. I know him for years now, and I know he takes every opportunity he can to bring in the gender perspective. He is GGGI's Africa Regional Director and Head of Programs. So Malle, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ingvild, and also thanks for the introductions. I think we're both really pushing for that agenda. So I will say welcome to the different participants, fellow advocates for a sustainable future. It's both an honor and privilege to stand before you today to discuss about the crucial and timely topics of transformative climate finance for collective gender intervention. This is a subject that carries immense weight in our quest and to address climate change and social equity. It also reflects the interconnectedness of environmental and gender issues, highlighting the inextricable link between climate change, finance, gender, and equality. As we embark on this discussion today, it is vital to recognize that climate change is not gender neutral. Its impact are experienced differently by women and men. And these disparities are often compounded by existing gender inequalities. While women, especially in the developing regions, are disproportionately affected by climate change, they are also unsung heroes in the building climate resilience and sustainable communities. The first pillar of our discussion today is the imperative of transformative climate finance. We live in a world where financing plays a pivotal role in climate actions, mitigations, and adaptation efforts. Sustainable and transformative finance is a bedrock upon which we can build a more resilient, climate-resilient future. It empowers communities and to adapt to the impact of climate change and transition towards sustainable and low-carbon economy. Moreover, it's a mechanism to support gender-inclusive project and policy. The second pillar is gender, equality, and equity. Gender mainstreaming is climate finance acknowledge that women and men have distinct roles, needs, and contributions in environmental sustainability. Empowering women as agents of change in the climate actions, not just a matter of justice. It is a pragmatic approach for effective and lasting solution. Gender-responsive climate finance promote policy and projects that prioritize gender equality, thereby strengthening the resilience and sustainability of community. The third pillar is the collective actions. In the world where global challenges require global solution, it is imperative that we foster collaboration. Climate finance and gender intervention should not be pursued in isolation. It is essential to forge partnership among governments, civil society, private sector, international organizations to create a holistic approach to address these pressing issues. Collective actions can amplify the impact of climate finance and gender intervention and contribute to the achievement of sustainable development goals. Now the question becomes, how do we integrate these pillars into a transformative climate finance for collective gender intervention? Gender inclusive climate budgeting. Government and institutions must prioritize gender responses budgeting for climate finance. This ensures that the women's needs and participation are integrated into allocation of funds from the grassroots to the national and international level. Capacity buildings. Empower women and girls with the knowledge and skills to actively participate in climate-related projects and decision-making. Education and training are critical components of ensuring that women can engage in the green economy space. Data and monitoring. We need comprehensive data to understand the intersections of climate change, finance, and gender. Robust monitoring and reporting mechanism will help us to track progress and ensure accountability. Inclusivity in decision-making. Inclusions in diverse voice in climate finance and gender intervention is essential. This means recognizing the expertise and perspective of indigenous community, youth, and marginalized groups. Innovative finance mechanism. We have to seek new innovative ways to fund projects that focus on both climate actions and gender equality. This may involve public-private partnership, green bonds, and other financial instruments. In communication awareness, raising public awareness about linkage between climate finance and gender is vital. This can drive behavioral change and inspire collective actions at all levels. Transformative climate finance for collective intervention is the topic today. It's not just a buzzword, it's also a call to actions, a commitment to a sustainable, equitable future. By integrating climate finance and gender consideration, we have the power to transform the trajectory of climate change and social inequality. Let us live here today with the renewed sense of purpose and understanding that transformative change is possible, and the commitment to make it happen is also too. Is it time to take actions, invest wisely, and ensure that no one is left behind in our journey toward a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world? So with that, I will say welcome again to this session, and I'm sure that we will have a productive session today with all the like-minded people around this session. Thank you, everyone, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Malle, for your inspiring words, as always, and for your time today. Now, to do what Dr. Malle Fofana says, to really build these innovative financial instruments that can channel finance towards gender outcomes, we need to, like we do with any outcome that we want to achieve, we need to build it into the entire value chain of the work that we do systematically and deliberately. That starts often in the work of GGGI in our support to member states on the development of green growth plans and climate instruments, such as national determined contributions or long-term low-emission development strategies, national adaptation plans, and similar types of instruments. We supported also the long-term low-emission development strategy in Burkina Faso and Ethiopia and a few other countries. And when we worked with the government of Burkina Faso already at an earlier stage, when we supported their enhancement of NDCs, we recognized the government's strong willingness to integrate gender into these climate instruments. They had a network of gender focal points appointed in relevant ministries. So the infrastructure for gender was already in place for us to work with. And as you may be aware, the long-term low emission development strategy is a long-term strategy towards mid-century net zero development pathways. So what actions do countries need to take long-term in order to be net carbon neutral by mid-century? And then the aim would be for other national policies to align with that long-term vision so that countries achieve sustainable development in the long term. Now, in such a document, because of that long-term perspective, we at GGGI really felt that there was a really, really unique and great opportunity to integrate a gender perspective. Because to address gender inequalities, we need to really tap into the barriers that are preventing women and girls from accessing political, economic, social, cultural processes that impact people's lives and livelihoods. So we got into conversations with UN Women in West Africa, and let me now introduce our next speaker, Elena Ruiz Abril, who is the Deputy Regional Director at Interim for West Africa and Central Africa. And she's also the Regional Policy Advisor for Women's Economic Empowerment. And she has a wealth of more than 20 years experience working to support particularly women's economic rights and women's economic empowerment. So we had her on a call and we shared with her what we were doing in Burkina Faso and in West Africa, and she immediately put her hand up and says, we want to support. So UN Women came as a true and real partner into the work of GGGI and made their way to Burkina Faso to support our engagement process with the government and these gender focal points that I spoke about to really and truly integrate a gender and social inclusion perspective in this very important long-term low-emission development strategy. Now, we have also jointly today released a paper and a tool for the work that we did. So I hope that our colleagues will share the link in the chat so people can look at that. While I hand it over now to Elena to present the work that we did together in Burkina Faso. So over to you, Elena.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. It's really a pleasure to be here today. And it's really a pleasure to continue the collaboration between UN Women and GGGI. I'm sharing my presentation. I hope you can see it. And excellent. Let me start by giving you a little bit of the background in which this collaboration and this tool has been developed. I think both Male and Ingrid had already set the context for this joint, for this partnership. And basically, from the point of view of gender and climate change, there has been a lot of work in the past in terms of the impact of climate change on women, in terms of the potential role that women can play in adaptation and mitigation. But now we are adding also a new angle to this nexus between climate change and gender. I mean, the realization that the climate emergency is going to lead to important socioeconomic changes in the economic model in the future and already in the present across the world, has made us think of what would be the impact of this important socioeconomic change on women. I mean, it's going to be an important transition to a different economic model, and as a result, there will be winners and there will be losers. I mean, some sectors of the economy will expand, others will shrink, and as a result, there will be employment losses or employment gains. So we want to make sure that women are this time on the side of the winners rather than the losers, because in many of the big socioeconomic transformations of the past, they were in the side of the losers. So right now, the question that we wanted to ask ourselves was, how can we make sure that the opportunities that are going to emerge in the coming years in terms of green jobs, green economic opportunities, are open and are accessible to women and girls? And how do we make sure that we guide a transition that is just and that doesn't leave women behind? So in the context of Africa, one of the ways to answer that question was to join forces with others. In this case, it was with the African Development Bank, and we conducted a mapping of opportunities for green jobs for women in the continent. And basically, what this mapping showed, and you have there a visual representation of the results of that mapping, is that women were already well positioned in many sectors that would create green jobs, but they weren't necessarily well positioned in the sectors that would create the majority of green jobs, and most importantly, the good green jobs. Because here the idea of this transition is not to move from women doing work in agriculture with very poor working conditions to one in which they continue doing work in agriculture in poor conditions with bio ingredients, bio inputs, and energy efficient technologies. No, here the level of ambition is to move women from use this transition to change the status quo and promote women's access to the good, decent, well remunerated, stable green jobs that are going to emerge. And that's why the transition becomes an opportunity for transformation in terms of gender. So against that backdrop, we decided to join forces with the GGGI to really take this at the national level. I mean, one of the findings of the report was that in order for that transition to be gender just, a number of things needed to happen. A number of policies needed to happen right now. And those policies, I mean, you have there some examples. Some of them were to get women ready, others were to equalize and level the playing field, others were to accelerate. But the majority of those policies, because they had to do with changing social norms, they had a long-term outlook. And that's why an instrument like the long-term low emissions development strategies is so critical to address some of these changes. So basically, that's why we decided to pilot at the policy level with an instrument that has a long-term outlook. And the idea is basically the rationale for integrating gender in the LT-LEDs is to avoid those disproportionate impacts that fall in a particular group, to ensure that all groups and men and women within those have access to the new opportunities that are going to be generated by the green economy in the form of green jobs, and also to leverage the transition for a transformative gender impact. We don't want to reproduce the status quo. We want to take advantage of this huge socioeconomic change to reduce gender inequalities, to reduce gender gaps. So with that in mind, we set to hands-on try to integrate gender throughout the whole process of the LT-LEDs in Burkina Faso. There you have an example of the process and the different stages. There was an initial mapping of gender impacts that for which we built on all the work that had been done in terms of gender assessments for the NDCs. There was a second stage of the actual modeling of the low emission scenarios. Then there was an important stage in terms of evaluating the co-benefits of calculating the employment impacts associated with the different scenarios. Then there was a first gender discussion as to the possible negative impacts of the transition, but also opportunities. There was a second discussion more in depth, zooming into specifically the job opportunities, the employment gains for women. And there was a final stage in which we took all the information generated throughout the process and integrated that into the actual document. So let me give you a little bit more detail in terms of what we did across the different stages. As I said, the modeling of the different scenarios, then the calculation of co-benefits, and there was really the critical entry point for gender analysis. There was an intention of having actually quantified out of the, for example, in the case of Burkina Faso, under the moderate ambition scenario, 170,000 new jobs were going to be created. So we wanted to know how many of those would go to women and how many of those would go to men, based on where women and men are in the Burkinabe economy. For that, we need sex disaggregated data at the level of sector, subsector, and sometimes even very detailed data, because the scenarios that were worked out for the low emission strategy went to the level of detailed actions, like we will build a solar plant, we will expand rural electrification. So that level of data and that level of disaggregation for sex disaggregated data is not always available, and this is perhaps one of the main lessons from this process. But that doesn't mean
Elena,
that we
just to, I think you may not be moving the slides, just to give you a heads up on that. It's a bit late, but maybe you do want to try to shift your slides across.
Okay, are you looking at a slide with a table?
I am looking at the introduction, the first slide, the cover slide, actually.
Oh, so in that case, I think it might have to do with my
I mean, it's fine. It's you are doing great, so it's not a big problem. Just keep going if you would like to.
Okay, but if you would prefer to share the presentation yourselves, Sona, that would be helpful for the audience so that they can have something to follow. But I will continue in the meantime to make sure that we make the best use of the time. So in terms of the calculation of the employment benefits, one option is to do it through quantitatively with sex disaggregated data. Another option is to complement that with qualitative information. So we took advantage of the institutional process set around the preparation of the strategy, and we held two discussions with all the gender focal points of the different ministries engaged in the development of the strategy, and we used that dialogue to identify opportunities, to identify obstacles for women's access to those green jobs that were going to be created in waste, in energy, in agriculture, in transport, in the case of Burkina, and also to identify specific actions, recommendations to make sure that were put in place at this stage to ensure that women could access those jobs in the future. So that was done through two dialogues, and for those we developed a number of specific tools to guide those discussions. Those tools are in the guidance note that we are launching today, and if the technology allows it, I will show them to you in a second. And the final stage was really to do the drafting and to take all the information that had been generated in the process and integrate that into the actual strategy, in the actual document. And we did that at the level of the diagnostic. We did that at the level of the recommendations, very important. I mean, one of the key recommendations was to develop a national program for green jobs for youth and women, and with a number of actions identified to be part of that program at the level of the monitoring and the governance of the strategy. So those were the key elements. A final stage is the validation and the importance of including women and women-led organizations in that validation. I'm moving now to the next slide, which I hope you can see. Here I'm showing specifically the guidance note that you will be able to access through the link that has been pasted in the chat. And I really hope you can see it, but otherwise go to the link. Okay, perfect. So basically the note has an introduction which goes on what are the LT-LEDs as an instrument, very much what Ingrid mentioned at the beginning, why it is important to integrate gender in the LT-LEDs. I think I just mentioned that. And then it describes in detail the actual process in Burkina Faso, with some of the examples of the members of the technical group, the process in itself, some examples of the substance of the discussion in terms of the obstacles that women found to access those green jobs, lack of technical skills, informality, poor work-life balance, unpaid household and care work, access to finance, etc., etc. It gives you examples of the actual tests that ended up in the LT-LEDs in terms of gender. It follows the process that I just described. It talks a little bit about some of the lessons. Data is one of them, but the importance of using, the LT-LED is just the beginning of a process. As Ingrid said, it's critical that the other policies will align to this long-term vision. And that's going to be really the follow-up work that it's going to really decide whether this document becomes a reality or not. And then the annex, the two annexes of the guidance note include examples of the tools that we use to discuss, to do that dialogue on gender. The first one talks about mitigating negative impacts, but also broadly identifying co-benefits, not only in terms of employment, but also in terms of health impacts, access to services. The second one zooms a little bit more specifically on green jobs and what are the opportunities linked to each of the scenarios, what are the barriers, what are some of the actions and recommendations. And you have everything there in the guidance note. Please use it and more than happy to discuss during the panel if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
You can't hear it maybe online, but there is applause in the room from the audience here. So thank you so much, Elena, for that very comprehensive and great overview. And towards the end, we saw the slide change as well, so that's good. Yes, do click on the link and see the guidance note that we have produced and shared. Now let's move to the panel, and I will introduce very briefly the three additional panelists to Elena, who we already know now. So I very much welcome Nina Kolibashkina, who is the Senior Social Development Specialist at the Climate Investment Fund. Great to see you again, Nina. Nina is really a leader in our space, promoting very much women's participation and leadership in climate action and finance flows towards initiatives with gender outcomes. So welcome to you, Nina. I also wish to welcome Dr. Parimita Mohanty, who is a program management officer at the UN Environmental Program, and 20 years of experience. And she's one of those truly useful people who has an energy background coupled with a very, very solid understanding of gender equality and women's empowerment. So she is a leader in the space of gender in the energy transition. So welcome to you, Paramita, great to have you. I also wish to welcome my good colleague, Purushottam Prasad Gupta, who is Senior Project Coordination Officer at GGGI's office in Nepal, who is working on a project in the agricultural sector for GGGI that has gender outcomes. So we will hear a little bit about that experience also in a minute. So welcome to you all. Hopefully we will be also able to see all on the screen. There you are. Great to see you. Welcome to you as well. Okay, so I think let's start with Nina. I think Nina has prepared a PowerPoint that she will share with us to speak a little bit about the Climate Investment Fund's approaches to mobilizing gender-responsive climate finance and some of the lessons that she's learning there. So over to you, Nina. We can see your slide in presentation mode.
Okay, yeah.
And now we can hear you. Great.
I'm just struggling to unmute. Great. No, thank you so much for the invitation to join the session. It's always really exciting to do joint events with GGGI and with Ingvild, who is really convening great speakers for various events. So I work for Climate Investment Funds, and just like a 30 seconds introduction for those who don't know about us. We are a trust fund that provides concessional finance. The funding goes specifically through multilateral development banks, and the finance aims to support both adaptation and mitigation activities. But what is very unique about this model is that, well, first of all, we see it really as a partnership tool. We're very proudly always mentioning our leverage factor of 1 to 9. So meaning that for $1 of our money, we're expecting MDBs through different other channels to raise another $9. So it's really a very partnership approach. And then the other unique feature is that, well, working through the MDBs, it's finance at scale, and it's technical finance for really large scale technical projects. But social inclusion, gender empowerment, co-benefits is really at the heart of the design of all the programs. So rather than to say, Ingvild was mentioning the session and introducing my intervention as mobilizing gender responsive finance, I rather work on trying to make sure that the climate finance that is provided is gender responsive, and trying to make as much of those activities really focusing on gender outcomes. At CIF, and we've recently celebrated our 15-year anniversary, so we do have a long history. Over the last 10 years, so 10 years ago, we've introduced gender action plans, which and CIF's gender policy, which allows us to be much more concrete in what we're expecting of all the investments. And we start kind of more modestly with ensuring just that the projects that are being financed are gender informed, moving really into gender responsive, providing really detailed analysis on how various project activities are affecting women's access to markets, access to land and resources, access to services, and incorporating targeted activities to do that. And in the past few years, we're really talking about gender transformative, that even that is not enough, but we really have to start looking at structural and normative barriers. We need to see how through project interventions we can affect some sectoral reforms, but also work on voice and accountability agendas. Also a plug-in for a publication. A few months ago, we launched a Harnessing Climate Finance for Women Climate Leadership knowledge product, and it has two objectives. First, that it really makes the case of why women climate leadership, not just women as beneficiaries of climate projects, but really women as the drivers of various processes, why it is very important. We have quite an extensive literature review and a lot of case studies there. And then we also produced a framework which we now try to apply to all investment programs and specific projects to really analyze, what are the leadership gaps where women are not present enough in relationship to the project activity, in governance and public service provision, in labor market, economic participation, also what is the role of civil society and how that can be strengthened. And then also looking at the barriers, understanding that without removing those barriers, we cannot really expect that this power balance and participation will change. And identifying specific opportunities. In the report, we have quite a menu of different types of interventions. But we also basically the purpose of the report is have this diagnostic tool which we can apply and walk through when looking at new programs and interventions. I wanted to bring up just one illustrative example from the past. Again, how do we use finance to push the agenda? For example, in some of the projects that CIF is financing through IDB Invest in Latin America, working in a solar generation project. So it's a type of an industry that is usually traditionally, culturally very male dominated. And when the projects were starting and the discussions were happening, usually, the response that you get from the engineers that are running those type of companies, well, there are just no women, they're just not there. So here, one of those mechanisms that was used was blended finance. So for those companies that have committed to a gender action plan, and then were able to deliver on the gender outcomes, the loan rate was reduced. And so in addition to the loan finance, here grant finance was provided in order to make that happen. And the company had to commit to gender equal pay, introduction of sexual harassment prevention policies, but also have a plan for paid internships, professional development, career progression opportunities, as well as childcare assistance, paternity leave, and lactation rooms. So looking comprehensively at various barriers and creating opportunities. And the success of this project was that after a few years of implementation, over 50% of all core technical and leadership jobs were held by women. So from a situation when women were literally almost not present, and if present, then only in administrative kind of secretarial type of jobs, really increasing it through internships, through working with vocational training institutions, a recruitment agency, and also having a strategy to work with retaining. I think this is also something not enough attention usually paid to keeping those women that you've managed to attract to that labor force. So this is one example from our past projects, and I wanted to also bring an example from our future or programs that is currently under development. So just over a year ago, we've launched Accelerated Coal Transition program. This is among new CIF's program. This is the one that the majority of the new funding is dedicated and a lot of political attention. It's currently focuses on South Africa and Indonesia. Those are the two countries where we've had investment plans already approved. Investment plans is also one of our unique CIF's mechanisms where we bring the several MDBs that work in the country, we bring them together with government representatives, and we ask them to come up with a unified strategy for various projects that will be financed through the program, and to have this joint vision for it before then every MDB goes into implementing their specific activities. So, and now for Philippines, where the investment plan is just being finalized, and for India, North Macedonia, and Dominican Republic, they're in development. And again, the design of the program overall is very focused on inclusion. So there are three pillars. One is governance, really looking at the policy level, what needs to be done and what changes are needed to start supporting transitioning out of coal. But the second and very important pillar, and what we're seeing that now the work under the ACT investment plan is actually starting from this pillar. It's people and communities, is the real just transition, is looking at the economic impact and how to engage, not with just those really directly affected. So when we're talking about social impacts, not just the workers that will be laid off from coal-powered electric power plants or from coal mines, but looking at how communities at large, how value chains where women are more represented, how they will be affected. And only then moving on to the infrastructure component when those kind of larger, softer sides are addressed. So within this program, and as I mentioned before, we do have quite strict gender requirements already for all of our activities. But in addition, we got some dedicated funding from Canada to launch a women-led coal transition grant mechanism. So additional grant mechanism where we're looking for opportunities to really work with women directly in this space, and specifically with women-led organizations, and focus on leadership beyond, again, just women as beneficiaries. So if we look at the theory of change for ACT, for every part, under every pillar for the outcomes of the broader ACT, we have gender-specific outcomes. So on the governments, it's increasing influence of women-led groups and civil society organizations, ensuring that all transition policies that are being produced by the program have gender lens analysis. When we're looking at the people and communities pillar, focusing on gender equality and retention deployment, but also looking at communities through socioeconomic regeneration program. And then for infrastructure, we're also trying to push the agenda of socially responsible enterprises led by women, and creating additional incentives and mechanisms that within the infrastructure components, those type of companies and enterprises would have a space to participate more actively as well. We also have this vision of working with women-led groups.
We'll have to ask you to wrap up in a minute.
Yep. Which we see them really as a bridge between delivering some resources and working directly with the affected local communities on the ground, but then also being able to elevate the voice of those communities to ACT national stakeholders, participating in policy level discussions in the governance pillar on the ACT. And that was the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nina, for that wealth of experience at SIF. And I think you pointed to so many important aspects, how to engage private sector, what type of outcomes are we looking at when we work with private sector. I thought that was very valuable. And also this distinction that you are making very explicitly about the difference between having specifically designed streams of finance targeting gender equality outcomes and mainstreaming gender into the volume of flow of finance that you have within SIF, and it isn't one or the other, it's both, as you are showing. And with that, I would like to go to Paramita and how this plays out in the context of your work at UNEP, and how are you bringing climate finance towards gender outcomes, and why are we struggling a little bit to actually get it all to multiply in impact? So over to you, Paramita.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Ingvild, for inviting me for this very interesting topic, which is very close to my heart. And hi, everyone. This is Paramita Mohanty. And as far as UNEP's activities in mainstreaming gender equality and human rights in the context of climate change and in the context of energy transition is concerned, we have number of projects. And we focus on access to technologies, access to finance, and access to skill sets. But today, for the interest of time, I'll talk about a specific project called Empower, and I'll bring some specific components within Empower. I don't have any formal presentation or slides. I'll talk. And now coming back to Empower. Empower is a joint project between UNEP and UN Women. And the first phase of Empower was just completed in 2022. So it was from 2018 to 2022. And the objective of Empower One, which was funded by CEDA, was to integrate gender equality in climate actions and in DRR actions. So Empower One itself was quite big, but one of the specific components within that is what we try to showcase is how can renewable energy be used as a tools for climate resilience building and for women economic empowerment. So for us, that has been used as a tool. And what we did in Empower One was 4 different components. So we work with subnational government and develop various action plans and also develop sections on renewable energy and women economic empowerment in the provincial investment plan. What does it mean? It means whenever the national budgeting happens, it makes sure that certain budgets is coming into that specific sections. So that's something what we try to do and create a kind of institutional structure so that the budgeting would come for renewable energy and women economic empowerment. We also develop the gender roadmap for integrating gender equality in energy policies and plans for ASEAN member states, which has been adopted by ASEAN in Empower One. So that's at the regional scale. So we work on policies and plans and try to see how can investment be flown into women economic empowerment through renewable energy. The second component where we focus is on access to finance. So we create various dedicated credit schemes or financing instruments with different local institutions and develop the whole eligibility criteria and guidelines around that and make sure that women can access that funds. And the third component was on access to skill sets. So we come out with number of need-based training programs and modules and e-learning modules. I'll share all those details actually later on online sales and marketing, on entrepreneurship development, financial literacy. So we develop all those things. And finally, we create lots of evidence on the ground. So we have come out with 10 different kind of climate resilient technologies, solar technologies, biomass gasifier-based technology, different kind of things for various applications, and create the evidence, build the confidence of various stakeholders. So that's Empower One. And Empower One was implemented in 3 countries, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Now, in Empower Two, what we try to do is, based on all those evidence, based on all those examples, how could we scale it up to the region, and how can we scale it out and bringing more women, bringing more marginalized communities working on this space and getting the benefits. So that's Empower Two. And Empower Two, now we have multi-donor funding. So it has moved from a project mode into a program mode. And we have expanded from 3 countries to 5 countries and probably few more sub-regions. In Empower Two, we were focusing on scaling up. So we are working on mobilizing investment for renewables and low carbon technologies which are gender responsive, and also following the leave no one behind principles. So we are working with a number of financing institutions, be it public and private banks, be it MFIs, or be it private sector, and coming out with various financing models. As we know that the requirement of different women groups or women would be different. That's why some maybe have $5,000, some maybe have $250,000 or above. So we are coming out with different kind of models catering to different target groups. So, and ensuring that we are not leaving anyone behind. So that's the kind of thing. So our grant financing will leverage more financing commercial financing, private sector financing, and which can then be going for women economic empowerment and for economic empowerment of marginalized communities. We will be announcing a finance facility very soon, and maybe number of facilities for the countries as well as for the regional scale. We will definitely share that again through our partners like GTTI. And the second thing, what we are also running several accelerator and incubator programs, which is a part of the skill development programs and helping women tech startups, helping SMEs to come forward and access those funds and run their business or expand their business. So in one hand, where we are leveraging finance and creating the finance facility, on the other hand, we are working with women CSOs, CBOs, and women groups and other marginalized groups and handhold them, mentor them, and then see how can they access those funds which have been created. So it would be through various technical assistance support, mentoring support, accelerator and incubator support that Empower would be providing. So that's another support what we would be doing. We are also currently doing interagency skill assessments on the renewable energy for sub-regions like Southeast Asia and South Asia. And once we have the skill gap assessments, we'll come out with various dedicated skill development programs around that. And finally, we are very strongly working on the policies and programs at the regional scales and trying to see even the roadmaps what we develop through ASEAN Center of Energy or in partnership with them. We are trying to see how can we implement those policies and plans, whatever we have developed in Empower 2 and reach to as much women and marginalized communities as possible in the Asia Pacific region. So these are few of the broad components within Empower 2, what we are covering, but maybe I will stop here and I can share a few of those reference documents and links for our audience to see and enjoy reading those, and looking forward for more interactions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paramita. And those documents indeed would be very useful. Now, Elena, for you to think about, I'll give you the honor in a few minutes to close the session with just a minute statement on, now imagine taking the work of Nina on finance within SIF and Paramita in specifically on the energy transition. If we were to transfer that to the context of the LT-LEDs that we started talking about in Burkina Faso, which is all about that long-term transition, what would the power of partnerships be in implementing the long-term perspectives on sustainable development in a country like Burkina Faso? So I'll leave you to think about that while we turn to Purushottam, my great colleague in Nepal, to speak about a different sector which is equally important to climate action, also important to the work that we did in Burkina Faso, but now of course focused on Nepal. So agriculture. So I'll hand it over to you for a very brief overview of how women are benefiting from the work that you are doing in Nepal. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ingvild. And it's really a pleasure to share my project here in Nepal. So I'm directly going to the presentations. So let me share my screen. Thank you. Did you see my screen? Hi, Ingvild. Can you confirm that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So this is a project about the climate smart agriculture, which we are implementing in the Madhya province of Nepal, which is supported by KOICA, and this is for 3.5 years. So we are in the middle of projects. And in this project, we have many components. So main objective of this project to support the climate smart agriculture to reduce the vulnerability and improve food and job security, especially for women and returned migrant workers. So under this project, we are targeting to 7,800 people, among them mainly 5,300 farmers, and we are also aiming to create 1,100 new jobs by improving labor teams, and then also to create 2,440 green jobs through the Challenge Fund. So So in this project, we have 4 components. So under one component, we are also supporting local government, which are the municipalities in the project area, towards the local emergency operations center to support towards the means to cope with the climate change. We are supporting an establishment of emergency operations centers. And then we are also supporting local governments to develop the climate smart agriculture plan and to support in its implementation in all the targets. For this particular component, we have also do one MOU with the Nepal Agriculture Research Council, which is a premium agriculture research institution to get validated research climate smart technology from them and implement in support and in guidance from them. And also we have another component to support directly to farmers towards the climate smart agriculture technology. So under this component, we are training women and youth and returnees towards the climate smart new technology. We are also supporting towards the new technology demonstration to help them to get more production from their piece of land and in the pace of this climate change. And the final component, this is the 4th component, which is to support in job creation and competitiveness through the investment in climate smart agriculture. So under this component, we have established one Tarai Agribusiness Challenge Fund. So under this challenge funds, we are targeting mainly to women and returning migrants and youth. So under this component, we are supporting a kinds of grants to women-based enterprises, youth-based enterprises, and we are providing grants around $4,000 up to $20,000. So we have 2 categories of this grant. So under this grant, we are supporting different varieties of agriculture enterprises, which could help to support the direct means economic growth of the Nepal and also to their income. And through this grant, we are also aiming to create the jobs in the Madhya region of Nepal. So this is the main thing. And to support this grant, through this grant, we are only supporting to 70% of fund, and they have to contribute 30% grant. But in this economic crisis, the farmer, we realize that even they are not able to contribute that 30% grant. That's why we made a MOU with that A-class bank institution in Nepal, which is Lakshmi Bank, to contribute that 30% of fund from their side to those entrepreneurs who are receiving grant from us. So these are the basic and in brief about the project activities in this project. And we are focusing on these key things, which just I wanted to share in brief, like we are focusing on gender mainstreaming. Under this, we are targeting to at least cover 30% female under this project, and under this challenge fund, the entrepreneurs should be 30%, enterprises should be led by women. And also we are focusing on different types of capacity building. Some capacity building trainings are designed especially for women's. And in those training meetings, we made compulsory to participate 30% at least women from the communities. And also we bring those women and youth into the executive positions in the group, business and in cooperatives. So we encourage their participation and to support, so that they will help on the decision-making process. And we have also supporting and tailored financial instrument, which could be have direct access to women. That's why we did one MOU with the Lakshmi Bank. And we are focusing on the robust monitoring and evaluation system to track the gender effectiveness in our project. So we collect the sex disaggregated data to track the progress on gender equality and to identify areas where more work is needed. So we are in the middle of project, many things to do in the coming days. So this is all about the projects. And as I said, we are focusing on targeting women and youths in that project. That's all from me, Wills. And definitely, if there will be any questions, I will respond.
Thank you so much, Purushottam, for that overview, which I think shows exactly what we wanted to see, the opportunities, economic, political, leadership opportunities that are available in well and deliberate thought through interventions, also in the agricultural sector. So we've been listening to particularly 2 sectors, energy and agriculture. And we are really running a bit late on time. So as I said earlier, Elena, I would love to hand it over to you to just give us that end takeaway, maybe around partnerships. I sense that that's something that streams underneath everything that we've discussed today. So Elena, please, over to you.
Thank you, Ingrid, and thank you to all the panelists. It has been fantastic to hear the different perspectives. I think when we talk about just transition, perhaps the most unjust element of this transition is the huge inequalities in terms of gender inequalities to access green finance. So that has been the focus of the discussion today. And I think we are seeing the trend of huge, tremendous growth of climate finance, and at the same time, finance that, a lot of it's being more and more gender responsive, but there's a lot that doesn't get and doesn't flow through those women who are at the forefront of the climate emergency. Women-led businesses, small businesses, but also women who are not business owners that are doing huge work preserving conservation of ecosystems that have very important carbon sequestration functions. And there isn't a mechanism to link those two. So in the context of the emergency, both in terms of climate, we are seeing we are making progress, but much slower than we should. But also in terms of gender, we are not getting closer to the SDGs, unfortunately. The distance is getting even larger. So now we are at a time of acceleration, and that requires thinking out of the box, innovation, new approaches. And that's where the power of partnerships come in. Because, for example, what we hear today, we have fantastic initiatives with the Climate Investment Fund that provide impact at scale, but that perhaps don't get to really get to those women at the bottom of the value chain, which are so important for climate action. And on the other hand, we have those fantastic initiatives in Nepal or through the Empower that target women-led at the grassroots level, women-led organizations and sometimes business, but that are grants that don't make it at scale and really need to add that element of scalability. So I think the key is going to be in talking to each other and finding mechanisms through the MDB that include the MDBs, the climate funds, private sector, those women-led organizations and governments, and articulating those type of public-private partnerships that Male mentioned at the beginning, to really start seeing more financing mechanisms that get to women and can be done at scale. We want to hear more about green bonds with gender-related use of proceeds of those bonds. We want to have a discussion about how to leverage carbon credit markets for women-led businesses and for women organizations. And that requires us of a dialogue where all of us in this room and many other actors, private sectors, financial institutions, commercial banks, MDBs, are part of the discussion. So I think really the power lies in that, in having that conversation and finding those initiatives, those innovative financing mechanisms that get that climate finance, green finance to women and women-led businesses. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you very much, Elena. And as I expected, I think you summarized it really nicely. So I think acceleration of climate action through innovation at scale, and we will achieve that through partnership. And why are we doing it? Yes, because we need the climate action to also bring us justice, particularly for those at the bottom of the value chains. So I think that was really well summarized from you, Elena. And I think with that, I would like to thank all the speakers and the panelists for joining us today. And also thank you very much to the audience. And I am sure that this is definitely a conversation to be continued as we move towards the end of this year and next year. So thank you all very much and looking forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, everybody.